Oh, good evening. Welcome. It's really nice to see you. An array of fantastic looking faces. I'm so glad that you made it up here this evening. My name is Paul. My day job is the Vicar of St Mark's, Milton Keynes. My evening job is air hostess for corporate events. And so I will be guiding you through this evening, an event which I hope will be of somehow good cheer to you. There are a few people, most of whom are represented on the screen, who have put this evening on and who have organised or sponsored. So thanks to all those people who've worked hard behind the scenes. Some of them will pop up throughout the evening and some of them will remain anonymous, but they're all highly valued. As you'll know if you've ever flown, one of the most important things of any air hostess is to tell you how to get out of here quickly. So if the fire alarm does go, then head out that door there and then turn either left or right down the stairs, not the lift. If you go down to the right, you'll be out of the front. If you go down to the left, you'll be out the back. And if you time it right, you might be able to run straight into the theatre and catch tonight's performance in all of the melee. So see what happens there. If you get a moment to turn your phone off, that would be great. Anybody that does take a call throughout the proceedings will have to do a forfeit in front of everybody because you've taken a call. As I say that, I'm just going to turn mine on to silent. Obviously, this evening comes with a health warning. We are talking about men who have abused or who are violent towards girls and women. And in any room this size, I know there will be survivors of historic abuse, survivors of current abuse. So the most important thing to say this evening is if you feel yourself getting shaky or needing some air, please look after yourself. Please look after the person next to you. If you need to leave for some air, that's fine. Pretend you're taking a phone call and nobody will know any different, or you've suddenly taken up vaping and you need to get out because it's been 5 minutes since your last one, and we'll all support you in that. That's really important to us. The theme this year of the White Ribbon campaign is it starts with men / it starts with me. That caption works a lot better in print than it does verbally, but the whole idea is it's men in particular standing up and saying, I know that I have work to do. And if I want to be a good ally to survivors of abuse of all sorts in all places, I need to stand up and take account for myself, my actions and my prejudices, my attitudes and the things that I do. The truth is, since we last gathered for this event last year, there have been some shocking headlines which you will have seen, which have caused you to feel sick in your stomach or caused your thumb to stop scrolling. You will have seen instances like the Hunt family, who were shockingly and sickeningly killed by a guy who just decided that's what they deserved with a crossbow one day. And we watch that on the news. And everybody pauses for a moment and realizes what a big issue male violence towards women is. And then the next day, the news moves on. And then the next day, the news moves on again and again and again. But the truth is, on each of those days, more women are subject to violence and abuse at the hands of men abusing their power. And so tonight we want to shine a light on all of those women, some who take physical abuse, some sexual, some financial, some social isolation, some are subjected to coercive control. Whatever the type of abuse, the men who will be speaking this evening want to say, enough. We stand up and are different. Whether it's the headline grabbing abuse, whether it's the tides of culture that allow influencers to gain followers whilst becoming popular for trafficking people, who can gain notoriety and fame for their abuse. We want to challenge that culture. We want to hold in mind the girls who each day courageously navigate their school corridors, wondering whether they will be upskirted on the staircase, wondering whether they will be airdropped pictures that they didn't ask for or asked for pictures they don't want to give. Those girls are really brave. The tide of culture is strong. And so this evening you're going to hear from some survivors later on, especially down at the Rose, but first from a whole bunch of men from different parts of society who want to stand up as influences in the other direction and say, we don't want to be like that. The culture doesn't have to be like that. Young men can have different role models who are positive and equally strong at saying, that's not how you practice masculinity. You can be a role model of kindness and goodness who protects women rather than abuses them. If you have any voice or platform or strength, you can use it to protect others and to be a good ally. And that's what each of the men who are here this evening are going to be saying. Each of us has done our own work a little bit. Each of us is on the journey. None of us are experts, but that's okay because we're waking up to the work that we have to do. And so I hope that throughout the evening you'll feel free when they say a terrible joke to at least give them a little bit of a smile or a laugh. If they've done a speech, clap them. Because if anything, we want to join our voices and our energies together to create a culture, and it's much easier to create a culture when there's more of you, that says, no, stop, enough, we want to be different. That's what we hope to be able to do this evening. So, you're going to hear from a bunch of people. They have 6 minutes each. After 6 minutes and 30 seconds, a little red light will go off at the back. After 7 minutes, the trapdoor underneath here will open. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? So come on. So as we start, I want to say to everybody, you are welcome. If you are the survivor of abuse, whether that abuse feels like a long time ago, whether the ripples of it echo through your life every day, whether the abuse is happening now, you are welcome. If you are an ally who is doing your very best to stick up for, stand up alongside and cheer on survivors of abuse, people who have experienced power and control practiced on them in bad ways, you are welcome. If you have supported a loved one and you know the pain of standing alongside them as they go through abuse and try to find their own voice or their own feet in the middle of it or after it, you are welcome. If you are a man who has some kind of nagging sensation inside that you might have work to do, that you might have power and you might have used it incorrectly in the past, but you want to be different, you are welcome. If you know all of the language and the terminology is up to date, you're welcome. If you don't know the correct language and the correct terminology, you're welcome too. If the violence and abuse that you're suffering is a secret and nobody knows but you, and this feels very, very raw, you are welcome. May you feel welcome here and amongst friends and in a good, safe space this evening. Later on, in about 6 hours when we've all finished, we're going to wander over to the Rose. Don't worry. In an hour when we're all finished, we're going to wander over to the Rose and we're going to have a moment there where we'll have a moment of reflection and pause. And I'm going to invite all men present to make the white ribbon promise, which is a promise of not using our power in coercive or abusive ways. But before that, we've got some fantastic speakers who are going to share in their 6 minutes their own experiences, themselves, and from the organizations and the communities that they represent, how they have woken up to it starting with me, it starting with men. We're going to go in threes. So first off, in this first section, we have Assistant Chief Constable Dennis Murray. We have Joe McMahon from Pink Punters. But first, would you welcome Council Leader Pete Marland.
Thank you, and thank you everybody that's organised this evening. Contrary to popular opinion, I don't speak from notes, but I do go over in my head what I'm going to talk about. And I Googled one thing, and the one thing that made me stop and then just think, I just got to say this and sort of present a challenge, is every 2 days in this country, a woman is killed by a partner or intimate family member. In the world, it's every 10 minutes. Just that statistic is absolutely outrageous and shocking. And then you realise, where are all those stories? So there are some stories that make you stop when you're scrolling, but in the vast majority of those cases, actually you don't stop because you never hear about them, or they're third on the news, on the local news, not on the national news. And then that made me think just how much of women's lives that sort of behaviour is internalised and accepted as just background noise. That 70% of women have experienced sexual harassment in any given situation. 70%. It's a lived experience I can never, ever have because I'm not a woman. I don't need to walk at night with my keys in my hand or my phone. I don't need to make a big deal of it because it's not my lived experience. My lived experience of being a politician is not for taking abuse just because I'm a woman, and in particular a young woman. That's not my lived experience. And it's really helpful just to challenge yourself and think for a second of all those things when it comes to women we as a society just internalise and accept. That when I go to the toilet, where I was over the weekend doing a course, because it's an old building, the men's toilets are just there, whereas the women's toilets were an afterthought. They're up the stairs and around the back. How many buildings do we know that's like that? How many societal outputs that women, in general, are an afterthought in this society? We cater for men, and then we think about women. How much of that is just the internalised, everyday experience of women? So I don't think it starts with me and it starts with men. I think it ends with men, because that's where it started, but that's where it must stop. There's no easy answer in society. We can all sign a pledge. We can all put our name on a website. We can all wear a badge. But it's actions and outcomes rather than platitudes that matter. And that's my challenge to everybody in the room, whether you're in a position of power or not, because we all hold the ability to challenge, and we all hold the ability to speak power to truth. And so I'm not going to use my 6 minutes. What I'm going to ask is just think. Just think about every time over the next 2 days, 4 days, 6 days, a woman in this country is killed by a partner. If that was somebody jumping out on them, it would be all over the news. Because it's somebody they know. We internalise that as society. The challenge is to the police to stop saying things like, we're not looking for anybody else. This is an isolated incident. It's not an isolated incident. It is an everyday occurrence. The challenge to the council to make sure that we provide service on an equal basis. The challenge to all of us to not scroll past that story because it's not a surprise, and just think that the more we challenge, the more we say that is not right, not just on violence, not just on abuse, but for the fundamental problem that in this country and across the world, we really treat women as second-class citizens in society. That's not right. And it does start with men, because it started with men, but it needs to end with men. Because if it doesn't, we won't change. And so I ask that you reflect on that. Every 10 minutes, in the time we're in this room, 6 women in this world will have been killed by a partner or an intimate family member. 6 women, 50,000 a year. And most of that goes completely unrecognised by anybody outside of that family unit. We need to change, and we need to challenge. And that's my pledge. because it can't continue.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. I'm Assistant Chief Constable Dennis Murray, and I lead for the Trust and Confidence agenda, which has violence against women and girls sitting underneath my portfolio. And I'm the White Ribbon Ambassador for Thames Valley Police. Based on what we've just heard, I actually agree that actually this isn't a rare occurrence. I have the misfortune that when something goes wrong and I'm in charge of the force, I get the phone calls that usually tell me it's gone wrong somewhere, and that somebody has been hurt or something more horrific than that. Now, what I would say is that, first of all, I'll talk about what Thames Valley Police are doing, but then about my role and what I see is the role of men in this arena. So Thames Valley Police are absolutely committed to reducing violence against women and girls. Our Chief Constable was at Downing Street this morning at 7:30, meeting with the Home Secretary and other police leaders, because Thames Valley are leading in the space of Op Vigilant, which is our response to the nighttime economy, where we put effectively undercover police officers out looking for men who are out there to prey on females. And that has been rolled out nationally. We've done a lot of work with social media influencers. I never knew who Sharon Gafka was, but she's a Love Island contestant. I've never watched it. I don't think I ever will. But actually what she did for us was she got the voice out to young people that perhaps policing couldn't reach, and got those key messages across about our commitment to that. We've worked with Lisa Squire, whose daughter was tragically killed, and she was happy to share her story with the police about how people can make a difference to prevent this from happening as we go forward. And then we're working with companies like parking companies to make sure we create safer spaces, and we have a very developed plan. But even with that plan, the reductions aren't quick enough and they aren't large enough. So the appetite of the government is to at least reduce this by half of what it is now, which I think is ambitious, but it's quite right that it should be ambitious in relation to it. And we are gearing up our structures and processes through the force to be able to try and achieve that, if not better, in that space. Now, I look around the room and I see lots of people here, and I say this because I also lead for the Race Action Plan. There's lots of people in here, but wouldn't it be great to see more men in here, sitting here ready to take up this cause, this fight, this challenge? It's really important. And in Thames Valley, we've got people like Stuart Codling, who's one of my officers, who very much champions the allyship in this space. And I say it about this cause, I say it about race, I say it about all the challenges we have. If it relies on the people that it seeks to help, it's going to fail. Violence against women relies on men standing up as allies and saying, this is not okay. So I'm happy to stand here as a male and say that this is not okay. I'm happy to say that Thames Valley, through my leadership, will fight the cause to make sure that there are more male allies that stand up and say that this is not okay. And it starts off with simple things. Somebody giving somebody a bit of verbal abuse, making an inappropriate comment, and just calling that out at a low level. Those courageous conversations where you say, this is not okay, is absolutely where we need to be. I'm getting worried now. I'm looking down in case this really is a trapdoor. But from my point of view, I will make sure that Thames Valley Police lead in this space. We really want to engage with anybody here who thinks that they want to get involved in this, help us on that journey, giving us advice. We don't always get it right. We don't always have the best solutions. We are really keen to do that. We're working with people. I've got colleagues here from the fire service who's in the audience, and we're looking at ways of how we can work together as partnerships with the council. We've done great stuff in Milton Keynes and other areas, and I think we can do a lot more. So I am here standing up for allyship. I think that males are absolutely the key to challenging the success of this, and I look forward to working with you all as we go forward. Thank you.
To move on, because we've got some people out here. If I move them along. So I've been involved with a great deal of violence against women and girls. But not as a perpetrator. Throughout my whole child life, my whole childhood, and in my careers. Now, whilst my family own the Pink Panthers organisation, I myself have been a paramedic in London and working for the emergency services there for nearly 40 years. So I've used what I've learned in that role. I'm a part-timer, if you like, in my family business, but my role has been with the emergency services in London, as I say, for nearly 40 years. And I've learnt a lot about violence against women in all that I've seen and done. In terms of my childhood, well, I'm the youngest of 12 from a poor Irish family at times when things were extremely difficult for everyone. My father, he was an evil man. He was violently assaulted all my family, and in particular, my mother, who he raped and beat on many, many occasions over many, many years, to the point where she was driven to commit suicide, carry out suicide. But fortunately, she never did that. And she got some help and she managed to escape from Ireland with me. But she left behind some young children. And it took many months before we could get those children, or she could get those children. But unfortunately, that came with my father. He had to come from Ireland with the children and had to be back living with my mother and me. And it didn't take long before the violence and the abuse started again. And my family suffered unimaginable pain and grief, as you can imagine, over 40 years. And that carried on until such time as he died, fortunately, when I was 16. But my mother and family had suffered for decades at his abuse. Now, as a paramedic, I've got extensive experience of dealing with violence against women and girls, from domestic violence to sexual abuse, to rape, murder, people trafficking, women being used as drug mules, and honour-based violence. And it's shocking the extent of violence that exists in this country against women and girls. And it is up to men to work towards rectifying that. It was particularly frustrating for me over many months, many years, I should say, when there were systemic barriers and failures in the law that let women down. Women would call an ambulance and the police on a Friday night after their husband had come home and beaten them, etc., just like as happened in my house. And the police could do not a lot, given that during the week he would coerce them into dropping any charges. And so what would happen is the police were unable to proceed at that time. Now, fortunately, that's all changed. And women now, rather than being thrown back into the lion's den, as I termed it then, women are actually able to get much more support from the police and the legal system. And we're seeing a lot more people who are being prosecuted. So my experience in a childhood, living in that house and growing up, with my brothers fighting with my father, trying to protect me. My experience as a paramedic, dealing with all of those incidents in London, and my family owned the Pink Panthers nightclub, and of course the licensed industry is a big factor influencing violence against women and girls. So what's my role in this then? Well, fortunately, my family listened to my influences when it comes to women's safety. And we have health and safety, we have fire safety, and we have women's safety. And it's on our top line of what we need to be doing to manage safety. Women's safety is on the top line. And we have many, many projects around women's safety. And I believe that we are the safest venue in this country for women to be at for a whole host of reasons. The benchmark is our daughters. If we can make it our venue safe enough for our daughters, for my daughter, for my brother's daughter, for my nephew's daughter, then we can make it safe for everyone's daughter. And that is our target, to make it safe. And I believe we are doing extremely well. We are spending tens of thousands of pounds a year on women's safety, and that's not going anywhere soon. So It's up to men to drive forward women's safety. It starts with men. Thank you.
Thank you. Amazing to hear the breadth of the size issue being global and huge in number, but personal in scope too. And Joe, thank you for sharing your story and for demonstrating to all of us you have a sphere, you have an ability to do something based on what you know. And whether that's in a club or a business or a family or a street, then taking on that responsibility is the whole point of this evening. It starts with me and some action that I want to take. Knowing that it might be a little bit heavy and wanting to break up this evening, our next three speakers have decided to convey what they wanted to through the medium of contemporary dance. They haven't. They haven't. This is going to be a bit of a crunchy edit though, isn't it? Sharing their stories and their reflections again on it starting with me and wanting to do their part. In the next three speakers, please welcome from the YMCA, Simon Green, also Gary Reid, and First Councillor Waqas Ahmed.
Good evening, everyone. I think after the first three speeches, I'm speechless. Looking at it's a big thing. It's a big cycle which we need to break. As everyone, even as a man, we need to. I wasn't born in this country, but I have seen stories which were heartwarming. It's like it made me cry. Since my childhood, coming to this country, I thought I'm coming to a country which is educated. Every other person is educated, so things will be changed. We will break the circle. But believe me, even in my university, I have friends who I kept talking that you need to go. You need to get help. And I couldn't do anything. Then this drove me to sort of, I call it a depression, because you sing a circle, you can't do anything, and you become feeling like you are a useless part of society. You can't do anything. You can't make a change. You can't make your friends better in society. You can't bring your family up because you are afraid from your hearts. Believe me, it's a tough place, because you have seen the abuse where literally the girls are sent to marry in my country, and then they sometimes don't see their families till they are dead. And this is real stories. In this country, we have safeguards, we have police working, we have council supporting, and even then the girls are not ready to speak out to get those helps which are there out. This drove me to many things. I started to work with the community voluntarily with Council of Faith, because I'm a man of faith. My faith tells me, Inna amalu binniyat, your deeds are judged by your intention. So my intention always was to do something better for my community, and my community is everyone. We have to break cycle, so I have to talk to both sides. Talk to men who are part of that cycle, and tell women they can get out of that cycle. So with frustration, I got involved, and that's where I came into politics as well, just to raise that voice, because I wasn't satisfied with my life, because if I am looking at all those things and I am not saying anything and asking my fellow men, stop it. We need to move on. We need to make a better. Our frustration needs to stay where they are. We don't need to take it out on women, young ladies, just because we have seen it while we are growing up. If we can't talk the truth with our colleagues, with our neighbors, with our friends, and make them change how they approach life? How are we going to change the next generation? Because they will just follow the leaders. There's no leader at the moment. We need these discussions not just for the elders who can understand it. We need to start this in schools. Because the young generation, they need to understand there is help. There are people who are willing to put their life and bring some changes in the society. But if we don't teach our kids, we can't change the next cycle, because the next cycle we don't know. Will that be Faria? Will that be Faiza? Who will be the next person? Will that be James? Will that be Susan? We don't have a clue where this cycle will go. But we need heroes which need to stand up and say, enough is enough. Today, can we promise? Can we go and discuss with our kids? See what options they have. Talk to their friends. Spread this message. Let's come together, break this cycle, and give the power for a peaceful community which we need to create. And let's not just leave it to the youngsters, to the elders to do everything. This message needs to go to everyone. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Good evening. My name is Gary Reid, and I've been asked to speak this evening in my role as a therapist at Sexual Assault and Abuse Support Services, Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes, where one of my roles is supporting female survivors of sexual assault and abuse. I'm not an experienced public speaker, so please do bear with me. However, when I was offered the opportunity to talk this evening, I couldn't say no to such an important event and something that I am passionate about within my work at the agency. I am also a husband with a wife. I am a parent with a daughter and sons. I am a brother with 3 sisters, a son with a mother, an uncle with nieces, a nephew with aunties, and a professional therapist with many female colleagues. So it felt right to be speaking out and speaking up regarding violence against women and girls. Usually on a Monday evening, I would be supporting several female clients who are victims of domestic abuse. They have all agreed for our sessions to be postponed this evening, and it is with their support and blessing that I'm able to be here this evening. As a male therapist, there have been many occasions where women and girls have felt they've not been able to see me as a man. This just reflects how deep and how traumatic their experiences have been. However, with the support from my female colleagues at SAS and through careful and a considered approach, always with the client's best interest at the centre of what we do, on many occasions I've been able to build a rapport with female clients which enable us to explore working together therapeutically. Exploring whether they feel safe enough to go ahead with therapy with me as a man. When these clients share that they would like to do this, as a male, I feel privileged to be in this position, one of trust, and an opportunity to demonstrate that men can care, can support, and can really hear the voice of women and girls. In my experience from the work that I undertake, the impact of violence against women and girls takes many forms. Not only is there the physical aspect of the abuse, there is a long-lasting psychological and emotional harm. This has a ripple effect and touches all aspects of their lives, including relationships with family members and often their children. There is also the socio-economic impact, absence from work or education, dropping out of education, not excelling at work. All of these ripple effects further the societal discrimination against women and girls. I want to share with you this evening some of what I see in my therapeutic work. And this is not with the intention of shocking or upsetting anyone, but to highlight the experiences of the women and girls who I support. Violence against women and girls, when physical, often leaves scars and poorly healed injuries, which in a number of cases have long-lasting effects. Violence against women and girls has an impact psychologically. Violence against women and girls is traumatic and often causes PTSD. Violence against women and girls massively impacts on self-esteem. Violence against women and girls has a huge impact on self-worth. Violence against women and girls destroys confidence. Violence against women and girls has an impact on autonomy and decision-making. In my therapeutic work, I hear about some of the horrendous and violent acts that have taken place. I hear the degrading and detrimental comments that have been made. I hear what has been said to women and girls to place the blame on them as victims and minimise their abuse. I hear how scared and vulnerable these women and girls are made to feel. I hear how men and boys relentlessly try to reduce them to nothing. I hear how controlling and manipulating their circumstances are or have been. I hear the struggles of these women and girls as they try to live their lives avoiding their perpetrator or potential perpetrators. But for me, one of the hardest things for me to hear is how some of these women and girls no longer want to be here. They no longer want to live. With the right care and the right support, these women and girls can find strength. They can gain a sense of empowerment to start to process and heal from what has been done to them. This resilience and courage is a privilege to see and to work with. All this pain and suffering is deeply disturbing. Not only is it alarming that these incidents have occurred in the first place, but it's how all of this is preventable. In the last year, SAS has supported 663 women between the ages of 16 and 75 in Milton Keynes. This is a rise of 10% on the previous year. 58% of these women were abused by their partner, ex-partner, or a family member. The remainder were assaulted or abused by an acquaintance, a person of trust, a stranger, a gang, or an organisation. We are here talking today about violence against women and girls. However, the support for girls in Milton Keynes is still lacking. There is currently no specialist support for abused children under the age of 16 because in 2022 the council decided to stop funding this support. 15% of girls have experienced sexual abuse by the age of 16. 95% of perpetrators of child rape and sexual abuse are men. Allyship is the key message of this White Ribbon campaign. It's about how men can take an active role. This can be done by calling out harmful attitudes and behaviours, by contributing to workplaces and communities to make them safe spaces, by checking the media content they are consuming. Does it normalise misogyny and sexism? If it does, change it. Importantly, it is not about remaining silent regarding men's violence and abuse against women and girls. To truly be an ally, listen, learn about the experiences of women and girls in your life, offer your help and support. At SAS, we listen, we believe, we support, and I encourage all men and boys to do the same. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Simon Green. I'm the Chief Executive of the YMCA in Milton Keynes, and I'm delighted to see some of our young people here today, and I'm particularly delighted to see some of our young men here today. But I'd like to speak to you tonight from a personal capacity. When I was invited to speak at this event, I wanted to find something wise or profound to share, some new perspective, something clever. But as I thought about it, I realised that's not what I've got to offer. What I can share with you is a personal story from my own past, and it isn't a story I particularly wish to tell you. There isn't a hero, and I might be guilty of oversharing, but it is true, and it does speak to this issue, so I will share it. When I was a young man, my sister had a number of violent boyfriends. Louise had many good qualities. She was caring, she was fun, she laughed easily, and at her best she was the life and soul of the party. But she was also troubled. She'd been bullied and victimised at school, and she fell into drug addiction. And she gravitated towards abusive men. I guess she saw something in them, and I guess they saw something in her. Maybe it was her vulnerability, maybe it was theirs. The relationship she had and her behaviours made it difficult for me to have a relationship with her. She was erratic, and spending time with her often meant spending time with people that I was wary of. And she could always tell that that's how I felt, so she wouldn't reach out for me. And that's how it was for quite a long time. One day she got a new boyfriend. I'd recently started going out with my now wife. And in an attempt to build bridges, my mum had the idea of getting the four of us surprise tickets to the theatre. I don't remember the show. The problem was my wife recognised the new boyfriend. She knew him from school. He was violent and disruptive. He was from a violent and disruptive family. We went along anyway, doing our best to make it work. We picked them up, and as a foursome we went to the theatre, the one next door. We had a drink, we exchanged pleasantries, we took our seats. Midway through the first half, the boyfriend got up and went outside, and a minute later my sister followed. A few minutes after that was the intermission, and my wife and I went outside. We'd ordered some intermission drinks, and we found my sister and her boyfriend, and we joined them. But they were being very loud. It seems they'd not only drunk our intermission drinks, but they'd drunk everybody else's too. They were very drunk. I was annoyed, and maybe we should have left at that point. But my wife and I went back into the second half of the show, and when we came back out, they were even more drunk and barely comprehensible. Her boyfriend in particular was being rude and hostile to nearby strangers. I got more angry. I told Louise that we'd take her home, but not her boyfriend. He would have to find his own way back to where he lived. We took Louise back and we helped her into her house. But as we got to leave, her boyfriend appeared in the road. She lived in a cul-de-sac and there was no way out without passing him. So I beckoned for him to move from the road, but he stood rather aggressively, swaying slightly. My wife told me to get into the car. I got in and we tried to pass him. He was beckoning for me to get out and fight him. He was a big guy and he looked dangerous, and I didn't fancy my chances or want to fight. He tried my door and my wife tried to drive us away, but somehow we got onto the bonnet and he refused to get off. We sat there slightly comically for what felt like an age, and by now my wife was losing her temper. She shouted at him to get off, she swore at him, she bibbed her horn, and when he refused to move, she drove a few metres, stopped again and asked him to get off, and again he refused. This happened several times. She then put her foot down and drove to the end of the road, braking fast and trying to throw him off, but he clung onto the window wipers. And again he refused to get off. So we set off in a slow and rather bizarre drive across Milton Keynes with a very drunk, very violent man hanging onto the bonnet. I think our idea was actually to head for the police station. Every half mile or so we'd stop and invite him off, and he would refuse and slur another threat. It was cold. Eventually, after a few miles, he realised the situation and he got off. We left him by the side of the road and headed back to get my sister. She didn't answer the door. The house was dark and I didn't have a key. We banged and shouted front and back, but she was obviously in a deep sleep. And eventually we left, shaken up and incredulous at what had just happened. But in retrospect, we shouldn't have left. In retrospect, we shouldn't have taken her back in the first place. And the next day, we found out that after we'd left him, the boyfriend had headed back to Louise's house. He smashed his way through the front window and he attacked her and fractured her skull. For this, he was sent to prison, but it took a long time for that to happen, and Louise was never quite the same again. In theory, domestic violence and violence against women and girls is simple and straightforward. It's a bad and evil act, but it's also complicated. There are relationships involved, emotions. For family and friends, there are also your own lives to consider. I don't blame myself for what happened to my sister, but should I have taken her home that night? No. Should I have left her in that house after what happened? No. Should I have called the police? Yes. My sister needed help, but I didn't properly see it. I didn't understand the extent of the danger. I support the White Ribbon campaign because we need to shine a light on this issue so that everybody knows the society will not stand for this appalling behaviour. I support the White Ribbon campaign because it needs all of us to stand up and be counted on this issue. It's down to the rest of us, friends, family, colleagues, acquaintances, to see it and to help stop it. YMCA Milton Keynes is a White Ribbon accredited organisation. We recognise the importance of supporting this campaign against violence against women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you, mate. It's remarkably easy to stand up here as a man, actually, and say, we need to stop it. But what Simon's story shows is it normally involves a huge amount of courage in a moment where you're not sure what to do. That's why a collective action and working as a community and changing a culture together and having other men alongside you who are also determined to be different is what's needed. Because if I'm honest, although I'm all macho and stuff, I usually don't have the courage when it's needed. And the presence of another man alongside me who might say, I recognise that, I see it, and I also want to stand up against it, is what's needed. We got 3 more speakers and then we're going to head down to the Rose. If you've been inspired, I'd love you to text another bloke and say, get down to the Rose in half an hour. You need to come and join the team and help us change the culture. You can do it on silent and you can do it underneath the chair. We're all pretty good at that. Just to mark your cards, we've got 3 more speakers, then we're going to head on down to the Rose. The Pink Punters van is outside where you can grab a coffee on your way. If you do get a chance to invite somebody, that would be brilliant. 3 final speakers. 2 of them have impressive necklaces and one's got a really nice jacket. So would you welcome in a moment Jay Virgo, Deputy MK Mayor James Lancaster, but first, all the way from the traffic carnage of Newport Pagnell, Mayor Paul Day.
Thank you, Paul. I've been contemplating what I say to try and avoid repetition with colleagues. I think probably everyone in the room understands that these appalling statistics, but one is one too many, and it's an issue we have to deal with. So I've took some notes which I'll go through, trying to add other perspectives. I think the first thing to acknowledge is I'm a man. I'm a 55-year-old man. I've always lived in Britain. I've grown up therefore through the 70s, 80s, etc. More of that in a minute. And it does start with me. It does start with men. I was saying to colleagues that I'm coming to speak here, how do you stop women getting killed by men? You get the men to stop killing women. I mean, it's very, very simple, isn't it? Really, and that's what you must do. I don't have. Your contribution, other contributions, a hugely powerful backstory to share. And then I thought, why is that? And I think my role model, my father, wasn't a misogynist. He actually respected women, and I think there are people breaking the cycle who have been brought up in that environment. But I think it's always been possible for men to step forward and be respectful and treat people equally and be decent human beings. But men, as a race, have failed to do so, the vast majority. So I would say, I'll put myself in my place. I'm not breaking a cycle. I'm fortunate enough to have been brought through a cycle which said treat people right. So I'm very clear on, there are, I think, heroes out there have been brought up with terrible circumstance around them who have said, I'm not going to be like that role model. But whether you're in that place or whether you've been brought up in a space that says, actually, you should treat people decently, either way, you can pass on to coming generations a proper way of behaving as a man. And I think that's very, very important. As Paul said, I'm Councillor Paul Day. I'm the Mayor of of Newport Pagnell. We're a white ribbon accredited organisation. My huge thanks to former councillor, now MP Emily Darlington, for saying to me, "Why aren't you?" And I went back to the council and said, "Well, what a great idea, we should be." And my town council are not a particularly getting involved in campaigns organisation. I thought this is so important. I went back and I said, right, on our next full council agenda, we should have this. This is such an important issue. And I thought, the fee to be in white ribbon is not that big. I'll pay it myself if need be, because, I think I'll probably get resistance. Unanimous. Absolutely. I was so amazed, actually. Absolutely. I said, I think this is such an important issue. We should be part of this. Unanimous. Every single one of them said, of course we should, Paul. Why aren't we before? Absolutely fantastic. So if you're from any sort of organisation, get white ribbon accredited, be part of this journey, be part of making a difference. So as I said, I think I had a good role model. I think it's not because I have a wife, a mother, 3 daughters, lots of female friends and colleagues. I think violence against women and girls is wrong because it is wrong, and it must be stopped. And I'm proud to play a small role in speaking at things like this, normalising objections to violence against women and girls. Also, my day job, just a little, I'm here as the mayor, but my day job, I'm the director of the 20th largest trade union in the country for a profession that is 2/3 women. We saved a 100-year-old women's association from folding 5 years ago, and through them we've been doing quite a bit of work. So today they've been promoting safe spaces and encouraging much more places where women who are victims can go and seek work. It's in the health sector. It used to be Ask for Annie, and they say now it's safe spaces. So again, what my organisation at work have done is we've said to all of our members, we've got 38,000 members across the country, 2/3 women, like the profession, they're pharmacists, and we're saying, here's the note you can send to your employer to say, why can't we be a safe space as well? Because all of us, whatever our organisation is, whatever its role in society and in the country, there is an opportunity for you as an organisation, your employer, a company you work for, whatever, to somehow get involved and stop this horrible, horrible disease. I was reflecting when I said more about the 80s, and this isn't from the 80s disco. I was reflecting on a time. I thought, what can I talk about? I agreed to speak because it needs to be talked about. But I thought, what am I going to talk about? Because I don't have this personal narrative to bring. And I remember being in the pub when I was 17. I used to drink quite a bit, and I was in the pub, and I was a regular. I was in there every night, at least every night, and also every lunchtime at weekends. And there was a guy there, and he was a great guy. We used to play pool. And one night, he'd forgotten his keys or something. He'd left something at home, and his wife came up. I'm only 17, and his wife came up, and she was black and blue from where he used to assault her. And I remember I was reflecting on this, and what happened was, I said, what's happened to that guy's wife? And other men just said, oh, he beats his wife. And that was it. And I'm trying to reflect now as I think about this. I reflect now, is it because I've had some life experience, I'm now 55, or has society changed? That wouldn't happen now, or would it happen now? I don't really go to the pub very much. But, is that environment there? Or have we perhaps, is there a glimmer of hope? The fact that this event wouldn't have happened some years ago, is there a glimmer of hope that actually we are on that journey and we're not finished until every case is ended and there isn't another case of it? But is there a glimmer of hope that means we can make changes? And I also think, we've heard horrible, horrible cases, but I also think, for particularly what my day job is, which is helping people in working environments, and we're forever, every day, we're helping people who are subject to not violent assault that puts them in the hospital, but sexual harassment, sexual discrimination. That's what me and my colleagues do every day as a day job. And to me, there is a path. I'm not saying every instant goes down this path, but I think there is a path from discrimination through misogyny to assault to killing. And I think, what can I do as our organisation? Well, if it's a serious assault, this is a matter for Dennis and colleagues. It's a police matter, or for asking for support as a victim, whatever it might be. But I think, so what can we do as a town council? And I think whilst we're not at that hard end of stuff, I think what we are good about doing, what our role is, I'm very keen. We provide services and facilities for our town, but I personally really believe we're civic leaders and we should show an example to our communities. We're community leaders as councillors. And I think what we can do is tackle that discrimination end of things so it doesn't get to misogyny. I mean, if friends are misogynist or whatever, I'll call it out personally, but I'm saying, what can my organisation that I'm stood here representing do? And I think what we can do is we can really tackle and look for inclusion, and we do that. And we're saying, even things like, sport is for girls. There is an equal place, because after all, we either all live in an equal world or none of us do. And I think there are lots of us that don't need to say, I need to go to a bus stop and stop a giant man beating up a random stranger. But what I can do, and what I encourage everybody to do, all men particularly, but all of us, is to, if you hear an act of misogyny, if you see an instance of discrimination, to call it out, to stop it, because where does it lead if you don't? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. And I just want to start by saying thank you for everyone so far for your contributions. Some of them have been horrific stories that none of us want to listen to. We, as a city, made a pledge to be white ribbon campaigned. But one thing I want to ask everyone tonight is a challenge. Stand up. Stand up for people, whether you're a man or a woman. Stand up to make that difference. As we've heard from Paul, we've heard that there was a lady who'd been beaten up till she was blue. That could have been your sister. That could have been your friend's wife, mother, whatever. We, in this day and age, do not want to be hearing those sort of stories. 2024, and we're still having this as a problem. I want to just say that this is not just a slogan when we say about starting with men. It's something that we need to do, as I say, as a challenge, to take action, speak out, and be a part of a solution and ending violence against women and girls. There is no point us every single year coming together and making these sort of speeches if we're not going to do something ourselves. Violence against women and girls is not inevitable, but it is preventable. It's a behaviour that is shaped by attitude, harmful stereotypes, and cultural norms. And that means we, as a community, have the power to stop this. I speak as a husband, a member of the community, and a human being who believes that every woman deserves to live free from fear. No woman or girl should feel unsafe in her own home, workplace, or on our streets. And I challenge, as we've heard, in your workplaces, if you're not white ribbon accredited, be that person to stand up and do and make a difference. We as individuals cannot do it, but as a community, we can. And that just doesn't mean here in Milton Keynes, that means across the world. So many people and so many women in Milton Keynes, safety is not guaranteed. Statistics have shown that 1 in 3 women will experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. That means someone you know, as I've mentioned, a friend, colleague, family member, has likely faced or is facing this reality. Change is possible, but it must start with us. It starts with men. We can choose to call out disrespectful language, harmful jokes, and behaviours that are against inequality. It starts with fathers, uncles, and brothers teaching the next generation of boys about respect, empathy, and kindness. It starts with friends and colleagues supporting survivors and standing with women. I also want to acknowledge the incredible work that's been done in Milton Keynes to support survivors and prevent violence. We've got Community Action MK, Milton Keynes City Council's Domestic Abuse Coordinator, the Sir Robin International Milton Keynes. Apologies if I've got that wrong. The MK Fawcett Group, MK Act, the BMK Sexual Assault and Abuse Support Service, and many, many more. These organisations remind us that these are real issues that are real people are facing every single day. Let's make Milton Keynes a place where women and girls can feel safe. It is not an easy journey, and we'll need to challenge ourselves, our behaviour, and our working together for our community. Together, we can ensure that women and girls in Milton Keynes are not living in fear, not living with violence, and not living with abuse, because that does not have a place here in Milton Keynes. Thank you for listening tonight and being here.
No pressure. Closing, that's fun. There's a lot of you, and I'm very neurospicy and very nervous, but that's okay. So just for context, my name is Jay Virgo, and I'm the Communications and Engagement Manager at Q Alliance, who are the LGBTQ+ charity for Milton Keynes. I'm also the chair of Fringe Festival, and I'm also a trustee at Community Foundation. So I wear many hats, but all of them involve me working with the community. I've been working here for 3 years very proudly. And I have written down my speech because those of you who know me professionally know that I could probably do at least an hour. And I'm really scared of heights, so I'd rather not fall for a trapdoor. But I'm back again after speaking last year, and I'm very thrilled to be invited. But not anything about me, but can you all just have a little wiggle and just move your heads a little bit? Because I know that some of you are probably thinking, I really need to stand up now. And that's okay. And the more you laugh, the better I feel and the less nervous I am. So if you could smile, that would be great. But I've been considering words that begin with the letter P: power, patriarchy, polymethacrylate, that's the type of plastic. But before I bombard you with bamboozling bumbles of brilliant alliteration, I wanted to tell you actually why I'm here. And a lot of people say that it takes a village to raise a child, and I was raised by a village of women, each of whom very much left me with a gift. And I don't have a mum. And needless to say, role models in my life were non-existent and very much lacking. But I find myself reflecting on all of the people who stepped up onto those shoes and lifted me up, and all the women who left their marks made of light, that now stand before you in the form of one mighty voice that will forevermore stand for women and girls. My stepmother, Louisa, though not her own child, taught me about persistence, that regardless of life's challenges, that I was and would be successful. I'm not sure about that just yet, but I'm getting there. When I was in school, I was gifted passion by my dance teacher, Mrs. Brench, who knew that I couldn't afford dance classes, so secretly taught me anyway. When I got my first job, my line manager, Jade, gave me professionalism. She nurtured my ability and ignited my spark. Even now, I cross paths with women whom I admire. Our CEO, Jen Hill, Mandy Legg, Odette Mould from Harry's Rainbow, and the wonderful Joe Ronan from MKFM are just a few that immediately came to mind. But I'll be honest, I had to sift through a list of 63 women, and I told myself that I needed to pick 4. So if I didn't say your name, please don't be offended, because then I'll get sad. But all of them are innovators in their own right, and they're gifted and powerhouses. Platform, presence, and participation are the words I hold for women and girls, giving them opportunities to amplify their fierce voices, a rallying cry for challenge and for change. You may have seen the recent trend where women are asked if they'd rather be stuck in a forest with a man or a bear, and the majority of women choose the bear. And for me, that's a pretty sad ordeal. It starts with men, therefore it starts with me. For even if I stood alone, and you can see that I'm not, but even if I were alone, let my voice be a thunderous one. Yeah. That resonates with you so profoundly, with others, that it may encourage you to instigate change. And I wrote a tiny little bit of poetry, as cringe as that is. When men stand for women, it isn't just an ally's call, it is a testament to love. To a world where equity holds, it's a place as common ground, solid, rooted, and built by all. We as a city and a society have a choice of which side of history we wish to be on. And I choose the side where women and girls can choose the man, not the bear. Thank you.
My youngest girl is 11. She's just started secondary school. And when you start secondary school, you get a kit list. And so we bought her all a uniform. And she told me, Dad, I also need to get some cycling shorts. I said, no, you don't. They're not on the list. She said, yes, I do. I said, no, you don't. They're not on the list. She said, yes, I do. Because somebody will try and take a photo up my skirt. Somebody had told her, was looking out for her, was protecting her and making sure that she was included in safety. I was behind the curve and I needed to catch up. My friend Claire in the pub, we were having lunch one day and she said, look at my shoes. And there were these big black DMs. As you can tell, I'm not that much into fashion. So I said, oh, great, they're a lovely pair of shoes. She said, no, look at my shoes. I've worn trainers every day for 4 years. Today's the first day I'm not wearing trainers. I said, oh, why did you wear trainers? She said, because I didn't know if he'd appear on the street and I'd need to run. I haven't felt safe for 4 years. This is the first day wearing shoes I can't run in. I was behind the curve. I needed to catch up. I didn't have a clue what it was like to live in a woman's world. All of us brilliant speakers tonight have left us an invitation to step into the brilliant world of you women who have to survive with incredible courage that we can only marvel at. And our hope is that you would accept us as being behind the curve, but would welcome us in and would tell us these things so that we know. Because some of us have learned some stuff this evening and we've got stuff to do. Maybe there's a misogynistic entertainer that we need to unfollow. Maybe there's a program that we need to stop laughing at. Maybe there's a workplace that we can encourage to become white ribbon accredited. Maybe there's some people who live on our street that we can challenge their behavior. Maybe there's somebody else that I can bring along next year. Maybe there's just a badge I can put on because that's all I feel strong enough to be able to do. But that's a bright, shining light to somebody that there is a man somewhere doing some work to stand up for you. So I encourage you, if you're here, try and take another step because you've been invited in to this little group of men who are going to do their best to stand up against misogyny and violence in all of its forms. Thank you so much for coming this evening. Thank you to all those who've been vulnerable and creative and brave in your in what you've shared. I feel richer because of all of it. Thank you for providing colour to what we've heard. You are welcome now to join us down at the Rose as you make your way out. Please do grab a coffee at Pink Punters. Is that right?
I was going to say, we're running a bit late, so we'll probably head off to the Rose at 7.
Okay.
Yeah, and start at just after 7.
Well, okay, we'll start just after 7.
Minutes,
All
yeah.
right, that was probably me waffling on. I apologise for that. So feel free to have a little quick mooch around the stalls. Head on down, and we'll gather around the Rose at 7 if you're able. Thank you so much.
This is fun, isn't it? There was supposed to be some floodlights, apparently, but because of the floods, the lights have gone to light up the floods somewhere else. So, I mean, really kind if you want to wave torches, but don't worry if not. If you just joined us, welcome. My name's Paul, and I'll lead us through the next few minutes. We're going to have a couple of quick speeches, and then we're going to create a moment where we wrap a white ribbon all the way around the ring of the rose, and that would be great for everybody to participate in that. But understanding that it's freezing and that we want to crack on, we've got two members of the, I've got our youth mayor and a member from the youth council who are going to speak first. So would you welcome them?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Maggie. I'm the youth mayor of Milton Keynes. And like Cody, who will speak in a second, I had the honour of speaking on behalf of Milton Keynes Youth Council. We are an elected group of 50 young people from across our city, the majority of which are school-aged women of colour, with the brightest ideas and most passionate characters that you will ever have the pleasure of meeting. It's difficult to explain my experience of being a young, stubborn LGBTQ+ female partaking in local politics in only a short speech. So instead, I wrote a poem. I don't want to be the first, and I don't want to be the only. I like to be one of the masses, one of the many. So the notion becomes unextraordinary in itself. I don't want to be impressive just because I'm the one in the skirt, pulling it further below my knees. I'd like to be impressive for my eloquence. Revolutionary in my ideals, not in my heels. Haven't we grown past this? I feel like we are growing backwards. Our crawling tropism back to the bottom line. Please look me in my eyes when I talk to you. Let me punctuate my sentence before you manipulate my mandate, twisting the words off my tongue. The tongue I was raised not to hold. I speak with my words in bold. I'll do what I'm told when I like who's dictating. I'll do what I'm told when the world stops rotating. Thank you.
Wow, that was amazing. So I have the pleasure of reading a poem from one of our youth councillors, so this wasn't made by me. She didn't feel safe walking home alone, or even just going to the shops on her own, and 8:30 was far too late to be hanging out in the streets with all her mates. None of them felt safe knowing the truth, words that had been made clear to them in their youth. The violence, the hate, the harassment that's faced, and if it's not all men, it's better to be safe than sorry. Her head's full of worry as she walks down the street. To all the men and boys that have not learned their lesson, what would you do if you was in their position? Lots has been done, but still not enough. With all the violence, women still have it rough. When you see what has become of this society, she won't walk home alone. The warnings come fast when she leaves the house to carry protection. Don't go without. And in this day and age, we should feel ashamed. We fight for the right to be equal, or so we preach. But the goal won't be reached until women can walk the street without having to worry about the clothes to wear or the way they look. That gives them the attention they don't wish to seek. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of things to mention. You might have noticed some people wearing an orange ribbon. That is the UN's Orange the World, which is same kind of theme as white ribbon. And you'll notice that the hotel behind us is lit up orange tonight to, again, stand against violence towards women and girls, which is fantastic. If you want to take a selfie with that in the background and post it, that would be great. Also, it sounds like Santa's here. He's not, unfortunately. It's the new campaign that's been launched today by Marie Bradburn, the cycling mayor herself, and the campaign to make women's the redways and the roadways safer for women cycling. So give you bells and tingling. That's fantastic. Amazing. In a moment we'll make the promise and spread round the roads, but first we've got two stories from some friends from MK Act who I've lost in the bright light somewhere. Here they are. Would you give them a big welcome?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sky, and I'm a Senior Independent Domestic Violence Advisor within the Crisis Intervention Service at MK Act.
My name is Carly and I am a housing independent domestic violence advisor within the Crisis Intervention Service at MK Act. MK Act offers support to victims, survivors of domestic abuse, aiming to empower women and girls to help keep themselves safe.
Tonight we're going to read a poem at the end of our speech, but first we want to say why it starts with men.
It starts with
firefighters,
journalists,
students,
truck drivers,
prison guards,
nurses,
pensioners,
counsellors,
soldiers,
civil servants,
friends,
lovers,
brothers,
fathers.
These are the professions and identities of men aged 26 to 74 who collectively chose to drug and sexually abuse Giselle Pellicott.
For those who have not heard this name recently, Giselle is a victim of multiple sexual offences committed by her husband. Dominique Pellicott drugged his wife, raped her and invited strangers to rape her while she was unconscious and filmed every single assault.
Giselle was unaware that any of these offences has taken place. Her husband was arrested in 2020 for a sexual violence not in relation to Giselle. Police seized his devices where they discovered all of the crimes that had been committed against his wife. Giselle is currently going through a lengthy court case and has remained brave and inspirational to all victims and survivors.
These are all normal men with normal lives, but yet, tell me again how sexual violence allegations ruin men's lives.
We have to witness every single day another woman's life being affected by a man's choices.
Donald Trump,
R. Kelly,
Conor McGregor,
P. Diddy,
Russell Brand,
Andrew Tate,
Chris Brown.
The list is never ending.
The moment that a woman falls pregnant, the gender norms are already decided by society. The moment she gives birth to a boy is the moment that he is born into male privilege and will never have to be scared walking home at night or carry a panic alarm every day. We cover our drinks and we ask for Annies in bars if there is a persistent man who won't leave us alone. We go to the toilet with our girls so there is safety in numbers.
If the genders are equal, why is there no safety app on our phones for men? Why aren't men told to flag down a bus when they are in danger? Why don't men text their friends to say they are home safely? Why don't men clutch their keys in their hands if they have to walk alone? Why don't men have to run in groups?
The reason why it starts with men is because still, in 2024, there is a pervasive belief that if a husband gives his consent to access his wife's body, then you're entitled to commit rape.
As said by Giselle herself, when you are raped, there is shame. And it's not for us to have shame, it's for them.
Teach her to be brave, as fierce as a lioness. Teach her she's an equal, so don't accept anything less. Teach her self-love, strengthen her worth. Teach her to make moves that shake the earth. Teach her to be compassionate, thoughtful and kind. Tell her other judgments are not how she's defined. Raise her to be a warrior, a Spartan, a gladiator. Provide her with the tools to be her own master and narrator. Teach her to be proud and not to be afraid to stand tall. Teach her to work hard and give her all. Teach her she's far more than her skin colour, appearance or gender. Teach her to speak with a voice that others remember. Teach her to embrace her quirks, to enjoy being unique. Tell her if she feels something, it's important to speak. Teach her to love herself even when her heart's in tatters. Teach her to break the bias because equality matters.
Teach him to be brave, to be gentle and kind, to speak about his emotions and say what's on his mind. Teach him that feelings have no relation to being weak, that one of the bravest things that we can do is use our voice to speak. Teach him to respect women and the importance of the word no. Give him the tools that enable him to grow into a man that you can be proud of and a man that women can trust.
Because protecting our daughters is essential.
But raising our sons right is a must. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. We're going to roll with the punches a little bit. I wonder if we can do something. We were going to make a pledge. It was going to be on cards, but we can't read that. So I'm going to read the pledge out, which is the white ribbon promise. If you're up for making it, would you hold your phone up with the torch on? And it'll be a little bit like a very, very small but impactful Coldplay concert. And then when I've read the pledge, keep your lights on. And we're going to have a moment of silence for you to use however you see fit, which is safe for you. You might want to remember a friend. You might want to remember a family member. You might want to hold in silence yourself and the learning that you need to do. You might want to just hold the issue. You might be a person of faith who wants to pray. Whatever it is that's safe for you and your community, we'll have a moment. The white ribbon is around the pillar behind me. Maybe that might be a focal point for you. And then I'll draw us to a close after that moment's silence. But here is the promise that some of us who are men here today want to make. And then we'll after the moment's silence, we'll pass the ribbon around the rows. So here's the pledge. I promise never to use, excuse, or remain silent about men's violence against women. Now we have a moment of quiet. Thank you so much. If you can, if you've got the battery capacity, keep your light on and spread yourselves around the outside of the rows, and there'll be a ribbon passed to you going all the way around the circle. We'll finish with this as we create a ribbon, a ring, a white rose going all the way around.